Long ago, my dear children, before the shiny phones in your pockets and the sleek computers on your desks, there lived a curious boy named Steve. Now, gather close and let Grandma tell you a story about dreams, failure, and a second chance that changed the world. Steve was born in 1955 and was adopted by a loving family in California. Even as a little boy, he was different. While other children played games, Steve loved taking things apart. Radios, gadgets, and anything with wires fascinated him. He always wanted to know how things worked.
As he grew older, Steve met a brilliant friend named Steve Wozniak. The two young men shared a passion for technology. They spent countless hours imagining a future where ordinary people could have computers in their homes. Back then, computers were enormous machines, used only by big companies and universities. Most people had never even touched one. One day, sitting in a small garage, the two friends decided to build something revolutionary. They worked day and night, soldering parts together, making mistakes, fixing them, and trying again. That little garage became the birthplace of Apple. At first, nobody knew their names. They had little money and no guarantee of success, but they believed in their dream. Slowly, people began noticing their computers. Orders started arriving, then more orders, then even more. Apple grew faster than anyone expected. Steve was young, energetic, and full of ideas. He wanted computers to be beautiful, simple, and easy for everyone to use. Many people thought he was crazy. Why spend so much time making computers look nice, they asked. But Steve believed technology should feel magical. Soon, Apple launched the Macintosh computer. It was unlike anything people had seen before. The company became one of the fastest-growing businesses in the world. Steve Jobs was a millionaire before he turned 30. Now, children, this sounds like the ending of a fairy tale, doesn't it? But life rarely follows fairy tales. As Apple became bigger, disagreements began growing inside the company. Steve was passionate and demanding. He pushed people hard, sometimes too hard. The company's leaders started clashing over how Apple should be run. The board of directors eventually made a shocking decision. The young man who had founded Apple was pushed out of his own company. Imagine that. The boy who built Apple in a garage was no longer welcome there. Steve was only 30 years old. When he heard the news, his heart broke. For months, he felt lost. He later said it felt like being hit by a brick. Everything he had worked for seemed gone. Now, children, many people would have given up right there. Some would have spent the rest of their lives complaining about unfairness. Some would have hidden from the world. But Steve chose a different path. After the sadness faded, he asked himself a simple question. What do I still love? The answer was easy. He loved creating. So he started over. Yes, started over from the very beginning. He founded a new company called Next. It wasn't easy. The company struggled. The products were expensive. Sales were disappointing. Many people considered it a failure. But Steve kept learning. Every mistake taught him something valuable. Around the same time, he bought a small animation studio that very few people believed in. That little studio was called Pixar. At first, Pixar lost money, year after year. People wondered why Steve continued investing in it. Then, something incredible happened. Pixar created a movie called Toy Story. Children everywhere fell in love with Woody and Buzz Lightyear. The movie became a massive success.
Suddenly, Pixar transformed into one of the most important animation companies in the world. Steve Jobs had turned another struggling idea into gold. Years passed. Meanwhile, Apple began facing serious problems. The company that once dominated technology was losing direction. Products were failing. Profits were shrinking. The future looked uncertain. The leaders at Apple searched desperately for a solution. And then they remembered the man they had once pushed away. In a twist worthy of a storybook, Apple decided to buy Next. That decision brought Steve Jobs back to Apple. Can you imagine how he must have felt walking through those doors again? The same company that had fired him now needed his help. Some people might have wanted revenge. Others might have said no. But Steve focused on the future. He returned with new wisdom, new experience, and a clearer vision. He simplified Apple's products. He cut unnecessary projects. He demanded excellence. Most importantly, he inspired people to dream bigger. Soon, Apple released colorful iMac computers. Then came the iPod. Thousands of songs in your pocket. People were amazed. Then came the iPhone, a device that combined a phone, a music player, and the internet into one small gadget. The world changed forever. Millions lined up outside stores. Competitors struggled to catch up. Apple became one of the most valuable companies on Earth. The man who had once been fired had returned and helped save the company he loved. But remember, children, this story is not really about computers. It is not about phones. It is not even about becoming rich. The real lesson is about what happened after Steve failed. When he lost everything, he could have quit. Instead, he kept going. When one door closed, he built another. When people doubted him, he kept creating. When life knocked him down, he stood back up. And because he refused to give up, he eventually achieved even greater success than before. So, whenever you face disappointment, remember Steve Jobs. Remember the young man who lost his company. Remember the dreamer who started again. Remember that failure is not always the end of the story. Sometimes, my dear children, failure is simply the beginning of a better chapter. And that is why the world still remembers Steve Jobs today. Now, off to bed with you. And don't forget, the people who change the world are often the ones who refuse to stop believing in their dreams, even after everyone else thinks they're finished.